What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Dr. Medic channel, and boy, do we have a treat today. I'm out here just east of Cincinnati, Ohio in the United States with the University of Cincinnati's Health, Air, and Mobile Care. This is actually going to be a two-part series, so stick around. There'll be another video that comes after this with the mobile stroke unit. But today I'm out here in Mount Orab, just east of Cincinnati, with this beautiful EC145e light version helicopter. So stick around, check it out. All that and more coming up on this episode of the Dr. Medic. All right, guys, so let's talk a little bit about UC Health Air Care. This place has three bases spread out around the metropolitan area here of Cincinnati, Ohio. They use all EC145s. This one's actually an E-Lite model. The other ones are the regular models, and the E-Lite model is just a little bit different because it saves about 150 pounds by taking out some of the automatic flight control systems that I'll show in a minute. It still has autopilot, but it just uses a HeliSAS system as opposed to the full-blown Garmin system that would normally be on the aircraft. But like I said, it saves 150 pounds. But this aircraft that's sitting behind me actually only has about 450 hours on it. This particular service has been around for 40 years, and they are part of the University of Cincinnati's healthcare system. They are a hospital-based system that utilizes a very unique setup with the crew in that they have a flight physician who could be an attending, it could be a residency. It's part of the emergency medicine residency program here, which I believe might be the only emergency medicine residency program in the United States that actually requires the medical residents to do flight time. So they have to go through all the same checks and safeties and competencies that any of the nurses have to do. And then their partner is a flight nurse. Now, most of the flight nurses that I've spoken to are also paramedics. So they've got really good pre-hospital experience. But I think that I was just talking with one of the nurses here who said that the average ICU and ED experience that these nurses have is 15 or 16 years. And so that brings just an absolute wealth of knowledge where, you know, some places might say you need 2 or 3 years experience. These folks got 15, 16 years experience. And the wonderful flight nurse that I was talking to today, who's been my host today, has been here for 40 years. She was here, I believe, on the very first flight back in 1984 and has been flying ever since. And ever since, they have had no fatal accidents at this program. Why is that? Because the university system here has continuously invested in the highest level of care related to safety, related to redundancy, having twin engine aircraft. They started out in a BO-105, then they went to the BK-117s, and then they had a choice of what they wanted to do after those BK-117s, and they still chose to spend the money on these EC145s. These EC145s are actually owned by UC Health. They're not leased, and they're not owned by the actual operator. The operator in this case is Metro Aviation. Metro Aviation, as most of you know, they're really big on the East Coast and especially up here in the Northeast. They're based out of Louisiana. They do all their own completions, at least most of them that I know of. They are an extremely safe Part 135 operator. And one of the things that I absolutely love about them is that they go out of their way and pride themselves. I don't know if I should say they pride themselves, but they go out of their way to only focus on the aviation and mechanic and safety side of things, and they stay out of the medical world. They do not hire med crew. They don't have protocols. They're not billing and stuff like that. When it comes to reimbursement, they are focused on providing pilots and mechanics and super safe aircraft. One of the recurring things that you hear about with University of Cincinnati's air care and mobile care is their 5 levels of care that they provide. They're not doing 911 calls, but they do have BLS ambulances that have EMTs on them. They have ALS ambulances that have paramedics and EMTs on them. They have critical care ambulances that are like your regular critical care stuff. And then they have their mobile intensive care unit vehicles that would include like the mobile stroke unit. And at the very top is the air care unit. And so I don't know if I've ever actually seen a hospital-based system that is so in-depth and has so many levels of care. There's plenty of hospital-based systems out there. There are helicopters that might have their own critical care, but these guys also have the mobile stroke unit, regular ALS ambulances and BLS ambulances, and they all find a way to work together with the recurring theme of bringing the most valuable resources of the hospital, whether that's a physician, a critical care nurse, a paramedic, or an ECMO team, or a neonate team, or a high-risk OB or something like that, or even the mobile stroke unit, bringing it to the patient. That's the common theme that I've heard over and over again. So let's get a little bit closer and let's take a look at this aircraft. But first, let's check out Cincinnati. All right, I'm standing here in the middle of the Roebling Bridge in downtown Cincinnati. They say this is the singing bridge because when the cars go over it sounds like they're singing. What do you think? This bridge is actually kind of a template for the Brooklyn Bridge. It looks exactly the same, and it's actually a little bit older. This thing was built in 1867. Super cool. Check out that riverboat. It's like a baby one. Woo! When in Rome, eat at Jeff Ruby's. Best steak in the world. It's a beautiful old city with lovely artwork everywhere. Look at that chicken. How many characters can you make out on this mural? Then of course I had to go to a Reds game. Oldest baseball team in the league. We were originally called the Cincinnati Red Stockings, and I went with 400 of my closest friends. I also got to hang out with Cincinnati Fire Department a little bit, also one of the oldest departments in the United States. And I swear that the city of Cincinnati hired a 5-year-old to draw a weird star of life as the symbol for the Metro line. From the sports teams to the music to the murals and even to the chili, Cincinnati's got everything. Let's get back to the helicopter. As you come up to the front of the aircraft, one of the cool things about an EC145, some of the 135s have it too, is this forward weather radar they have. I mean, this thing can see 5 to 10 miles ahead. And some aircraft have, the XM satellite weather radio. I've done a story on that where there's some latency issues that can happen there and it's delayed a little bit. I mean, it's not bad, but not nearly as good as a real-time forward-looking weather radar that can even if with all the planning in the world, a weather system can still pop up in front of you, especially in a place like Ohio or something like that. And so one of the amazing things that this radar can do is it actually can see that real-time radar that maybe they might not have seen when they did their weather checks. It can look, maybe 10, 15 miles ahead. It's not necessarily going to shoot through the most powerful storms like some radar can, but it's one added benefit that the pilot has. I believe they can also point it up a little bit and actually see things like hail coming down as well. It's a very, very valuable resource and an expensive one is too, but again, another thing that they invested in. Down here in the bottom, they have a good wire strike system again, top and bottom that you see on a lot of helicopters. But what's really cool, which I think originally comes from like the BK-117, are these little front parts here to the bottom skids that you see. So if a line did come down here and missed this actual, there goes a Hellcat, and missed this actual wire strike system and came down below, you wouldn't want it to actually get caught in between here, and so a wire could actually the bottom of this and then it would guide it underneath of the aircraft, which is pretty cool. You see over here on the right side there's a pitot tube there, but there's another pitot tube right here. Not every aircraft is going to have that redundancy, but one of the great themes that you see here at UC Air Care is their transport viability in terms of being an actual transport aircraft, where the philosophy of that being that there's never going to be a system on this aircraft that if that one thing goes down, that it's going to bring down the aircraft. I mean, certainly there could be something that brings down the aircraft, but it wouldn't be a single system or a single item or something like that. And so there's two of everything. There's two computer systems, there's two engines, there's two pitot tubes, there's two sensors of everything. It's absolutely amazing.
Let's crawl underneath the aircraft real quick.
And as you come under the aircraft, you'll actually see underneath here that they have 3 floodlights down there that would be used for landing. But these 2 lights that you see underneath here are both actually controllable, and they can point those and angle them to where they need, in addition to the extra floodlights that are underneath. And then as you can see on this side, there's going to be a shielded temperature sensor, and there's actually another one on the other side. Again, that redundancy. Looking up here in the front of the aircraft, they got the windshield wipers. Again, this is an IFR aircraft, and they have instrument approaches to many of the hospitals here in Ohio, as well as obviously the airports. And so if the weather's bad in terms of just visibility or rain or something like that, not thunderstorms or anything like that, but if it's raining, but and it's just a visibility problem, this aircraft can take off and still go and retrieve their patients from IFR approaches and get them where they need to be. Whereas, if you didn't have those IFR approaches, and if you didn't have an IFR aircraft, you wouldn't be able to take the flight at all. Okay, moving up top, you can see the other wire strike system and some more comms antennas. As we jump up here, we see one of the inlets to the Pratt Whitney 745 horsepower turbo shaft engine. And there's 2 of them. So this baby puts out almost 1,500 horsepower, which is more than enough power to get this thing off of the ground with all of the crew. They may take extra patients on board. They may take family members. They may take 2 or 3 different physicians, especially if it's like an ECMO call or something like that. This aircraft can lift a lot of weight. Okay, moving over here, this is where they would refuel. And you can see the fuel gauge there, and then there's going to be a grounding thing down here because you always got to ground the aircraft anytime you are refueling it. Look at the back of that turbine engine. It's just absolutely beautiful with that titanium exhaust. Okay, and so moving back here to the back of the aircraft, what makes an EC145 one of the greatest aircraft for air ambulance operations anywhere in the world are these awesome clamshell doors. And not only do they have the clamshell doors, but they do have a full-size ambulance stretcher that's back here. So when we open up these doors, not easy to do with one hand. And you can see just how much room is in the back of this aircraft. We have this full-size stretcher back here. We're going to get inside this aircraft in a second, but I just wanted to show how much room there is here with these clamshell doors. Right about here where the antenna is, this is your no-go point, at least on the EC145, where you would never want to go behind this aircraft, even though it does have an elevated tail rotor. It's still low enough that it could catch somebody, especially if they're on uneven ground or something like that. And so if you're ever around one of these aircraft or you're helping load one, right about here where the tail numbers are is where you would not want to ever go behind there. And right here where this tail strike detection bar is, one thing that's missing there is there's normally, a big heavy steel plate right there to counterbalance some of the weight that's up in the front of the aircraft. But remember, this is an E-Light aircraft, and they've reduced 150 pounds up front. So they were able to take this plate off back here so they don't need that counterbalance, which is pretty neat. Okay, moving back here to the tail, it's actually a lot cooler than it looks because this aircraft is kind of a conglomerate successor to the BK-117. I mean, the EC-135 kind of came first, but then came this EC-145, which technically is still called a BK-117, but is marketed as an EC-145, or now is marketed as an H-145, depending on what the model is you get. The newer models can have a fenestron tail. This one still has a regular tail rotor, which is just fine. This one does have the 4 blades. You can now get a 5-bladed H-145, which is super awesome. But when you're looking at the fins back here, it's really, really cool to see the advancement of the aerodynamics of this aircraft. These vertical stabilizers are angled in a certain fashion, and then this horizontal stabilizer actually has a little lip right here which is kind of called a gurney flap. Look that up. That's kind of a reference to a NASCAR effect to the tail, but it only has it on this one side, which, you know, I'm not going to say that I'm an expert at that by any means, but it certainly, I can imagine that has something to do with the downwash of the rotors and the air that's coming down and how it hits this particular horizontal stabilizer in preparation to go into the airfoil of this tail rotor. So that's actually really, really cool because, as you can see, I don't know if you can see it right here, but the gurney flap, where it's kind of a flat lip on the back of that horizontal stabilizer, is only there on the left side. It's not there on the right side. And then if we stand all the way on the back of the aircraft, probably, I don't know, right about here, you should be able to see that there's a little bit of leftward tilt to the horizontal tail fin right there. And, you know, over speeds of 30 or 40 knots, that's going to drastically aid in the weather vaning effect and reducing the amount of torque that actually has to go to the tail rotor to keep the tail straight. When you slow down, it's not going to have much of an effect, but, you know, over 30, 40 knots, it's going to play a big role. Look at how absolutely cool the mechanics and the machinery is of that tail rotor system. Moving over here to the right side, you can see the access port to the other engine, and then behind this door over here is going to be where the lead acid battery system is. Very important to have quick access to that in case there's a problem with the battery system. Over here you're going to see some other doors for the shore lines. This is going to be the 110 or 120 volt shore line, and then next to that you're going to have the Tannis preheat system, which certainly is probably not needed today since it's 185 degrees out here. And then below that is going to be the full shoreline right here. And I absolutely love that they put this yellow X on here with this tape, because you can see it kind of just blends in. If that wasn't there, and if it was nighttime, maybe you wouldn't know that this door was open, but when that yellow tape is visible, it's obviously open, and so we can get closed. Love the certification plate here that has the serial number and the model. You can see that this thing was made in September of 2022 and is an MBB BK117C2 model, which is also an E-Lite model, which we'll look at more inside. And then, as you saw when I opened up those clamshell doors, you saw a small oxygen tank, and then there's another one on the stretcher. Those are D tanks, and that's oxygen that's stored under pressure. So it's in like a metal tank, and it's with rounded ends, and is stored at a pressure, you know, of anywhere between 1,000 and 2,300 pounds per square inch. But even stored at that pressure, it runs out pretty quick. And so some aircraft have to replace those tanks all the time, or they have to have bigger tanks, which takes up a lot of room. It adds a lot of weight, and it's kind of unsafe, or it could be considered unsafe, maybe in a crash event or something like that. But some aircraft, this one being one of them, has a liquid oxygen system, which is what you see underneath here. So if we remove these Zeus fasteners, which I'm not going to do right now, there'll be a tank under there of liquid oxygen. And so instead of storing the oxygen under pressure, they're storing it at a lower temperature, and oxygen is, you know, at a very, very, very cold temperature, it will turn to liquid. And so that oxygen can last, you know, maybe 2, 3, 4 days or a week, where the other oxygen in the tanks, in the metal tanks that are stored under pressure, would only last maybe one patient transport. Now, coming over here to the what would normally be the co-pilot side, is going to be where the nurse sits on the way out to most calls. Now, when they get a call, the nurse quickly is able to get in here, because this system actually takes like 4 minutes. Once you've turned the battery switch on, it takes about 4 minutes for the computer system to even completely boot up. And so the nurse saves time while the pilot, it might be moving the aircraft out or checking weather. The nurse can come out and quickly flip the battery switch and start some of the systems booting up and stuff like that. Now, they can still put the controls in here when they're doing recurrent training or when they're training a new pilot or something like that. But taking the controls out again is one added safety feature, because you don't, if just in case the nurse or something was to slip and hit one of the controls. But you know, there are plenty of flight services out there that leave those controls in, you know, and they just tell the paramedic or the nurse to not touch them. But here they take them out, which is perfectly fine. Now, like I said, this is an EC145 E-Lite model, which basically means they've removed about 150 pounds worth of computer systems and actuators and different electronics, just to lighten the aircraft a little bit, you know, because not everybody needs all the whammy-jammy autopilot stuff that comes with the Garmin system and the regular system on the aircraft. So instead, it's been replaced with this Genesis system that still has a Genesis Helisat system. It still is 3-axis autopilot. It just doesn't have all of the extra controls. Still, as soon as you turn it on, it's going to have the stability augmentation system built into it. It's going to turn on automatically. There's 2 Helisat systems on here, so it is a redundant system. You can still control and maintain for heading and altitude. You can still shoot a navigation approach or an instrument approach or a GPS approach. You can still do all that, and it still has the stability augmentation system built in. It's just saving a little bit of weight. And so like maybe you've seen in one of my previous videos where I talked about what the FADEC system is, being, you know, a fully automated digital electronic control system that controls the fuel like the EC135 has, or some of the EC130s. The EC145 doesn't have it, so it's actually still manually controlled, dual manual controls on the cyclic that the pilot controls, which I think is pretty cool. Now, when it comes to safety stuff, the nurse and the crew who's on board, or even the firefighters and paramedics who are working the scene, would still need to know how to shut this thing off in an emergency. And so you have the 2 emergency off switches, which are going to cut the fuel to both engines. They're both located right up here at the top. And then you also have the battery master switch that's right here in the middle that you can shut off. You can also reach down here if you had to and turn on the ELT if for some reason it doesn't turn on automatically. And over to the pilot's right is the rotor brake system, and you can just pull that up and it'll lock into place.
And behind the pilot, we have this light and this camera for the cockpit video and voice recorder. And overhead, we have a close-up look of all of the breakers and overhead panel switches. You get a close-up look of the cyclic. And of course the foot pedals. And then sitting in the middle, a couple of ventilation controls as well as the fire extinguisher. And then you always got to have a compass so you know where you're going.
Okay, so that's really it for up front. So let's jump in the back and take a look at the medical compartment. And so they utilize 4-point harnesses for the front 2 seats, but all 3 back seats have 5-point harnesses. Pretty standard portable suction unit with their ANSI approved vest in the seat back pocket. And all air ambulances should have a survival kit, and this is where they keep theirs. And all 3 members wear night vision goggles on this aircraft, and this is where they would store them. This is one of the personal lights that they can control between red, green, and blue. And then this is kind of a master panel where they can turn on the power for oxygen, suction, and that lovely medical air, as well as the timed lights that are on the back of the aircraft. When you're taking care of patients, there's lots of wrappers and trash that are created, and they would go in this round device here, and then any sharps would go in the red sharps container. And then lifting up the head of the stretcher, they've got some extra supplies on the back of the stretcher as well as their clipboard. And they also have a spare monitor battery and some spare monitor cables, which are always important to have.
Okay, so now we've moved into the back, and as you can see, there's 3 seats back here. I'm the guest for the day, so I'm sitting here, and that's why I'm wearing a flight suit. I don't just walk around in a flight suit. We may be taking a flight today, so I don't ever jump on an aircraft unless I'm wearing a flight suit. Super important for safety, for fire safety. These things are made out of Nomex, and they certainly have been shown to protect you in case there was a fire in an emergency.
And we did catch a flight. I think we were off the ground in probably 6 or 7 minutes. It was very organized. It was very structured. And we had about a 15 or 20 minute flight to a small rural facility for a patient who had an acute intracranial hemorrhage. Again, I really got the sense that it was a no-nonsense operation. The flight physician and the flight nurse were talking back and forth over the intercom on the way out, already preparing some medications in anticipation of what the patient might need. It was very clear communication all the way through. It was a very smooth ride as well. And one thing that I thought that was absolutely amazing, I mean, this was an inter-facility transfer going from a small rural facility to University of Cincinnati healthcare in downtown Cincinnati. And they seem to treat this transfer almost the same as a scene flight. We landed, left the engines running, and we were in and out in less than 6 minutes and on our way to UC in downtown Cincinnati. And then as we go to lift off here, I mean, it didn't matter which leg of these flights that we were on. This pilot was just absolutely on it. The communication was so clear. His directions were clear. He always called out sterile cockpit for every single leg of the flight. It ensured that we had our eyes out, that we were clear left, that we were clear right. Very, very smooth, very, very safe, very, very clear operation.
All right, belts, equipment all set to go?
Okay.
Yes, sir. All right, test pressure's good. Master caution cans all good. Clear left, good right. Air Carrier 3 lifting off at 14:38. Will be 25 en route for the U. 5 on board. 1 hour 5-2 on fuel.
Air Carrier 3 out country lifting 14:38 as fuel.
All right, final check's good. We're gonna go out to our 10 o'clock. All out anything you see, sir.
And just listen to this beautiful communication between the flight nurse and the flight physician.
I mean, it's like a 3.
Yeah, I feel like we can probably just leave it. I do think we should give him Kepra, though. I don't think we need to give him anything else.
Will do. I'll grab the Kepra out of there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
And it was a beautiful flight to UC, and we got to land on top of the hospital, which is absolutely epic. No matter where you are in the country, when you get to land on top of the hospital, super, super cool. And on the return leg home, I got to sit up front. Woo-hoo! And getting to watch the pilot go through the startup procedures and all of his checklists and the cross checks, you can tell that this is routine, that they do this on every single leg of every single flight. Again, very, very structured, very, very smooth, super, super safe, always talking about calling out obstructions, clear left and clear right, utilizing the passenger, even though I'm the guest, but utilizing them as an extra set of eyes. And again, always one of my favorite things, verbalizing sterile cockpit just before takeoff on every single leg of the flight.
Set, LSAS checks, cell phone's airplane mode, iPads and stuff, we're good. Make sure we're good here.
2 right, clear left to go. 2 Delta Charlie.
Alright, belts, good. Doors, equipment, we checked everything in the back, we're good, everything's secured over there. You'll probably want to close your window. It'll cool down as we get the air circulating. And just make sure your WeMacs are all opened up for you there. You got 1 here and then 3 on your doorpost. Okay. Cincinnati downtown area traffic, Air Carrier 3 be lifting from University Hospital, departing the area to the east towards Lincoln. Air Carrier 3 off at 01 after the hour 47782-993. I got a green lift number back from the CI3 base. 1 hour 31 on fuel. And 2 on board. We'll be 16 en route.
Air Carrier 3 out country lifting 1601 green FCC 477-82993.
They've got a TFR for the ball game. We'll go out towards Christ, and then we'll end up in between the 2 candlesticks, the towers, and then off to the east we'll fly over Lunken. Okay, and they got some traffic downtown Lunken there. You'll see that on there, and you'll also see it there. Call out anything you see. If you see birds or anything, you may be the only one that sees them. Let me know. High, low, clock angle. Bolts, temps, pressures. We're all good there. Clear right, good left. Clear left. And we go looking up, so we're all set there. Frictions are off. Power check as we lift. We'll check torques, temps and everything at a stabilized hover, and then out we go to about our 1 o'clock. Temps, pressure's good, stabilized hover. Power reserves are good. Still cockpit, call out anything you see. Pitch over.
Decision height.
All right, safety speed. DUI. Lunkin Tower, Air Care 3, just off of UC. Need to transition back to the east.
Air Care 3, Lunkin Tower, eastbound transition approved. Crossover at midfield, at above 2,000 feet, altimeter 29992.
2992, midfield, Air Care 3.
But then we got to depart the hospital and fly right over downtown Cincinnati, which was certainly a treat.
Lunkin is just past the hill in the valley there. You see the traffic start to come up.
Air Care 2 in the Butler County crew, Air Care 2 in the Butler County crew, scene 1, launch and stage, Claremont County near Felicity. Air Care 2 in the Butler County crew, Air Care 2 in the Butler County crew, scene 1, launch and stage, in Claremont County near Felicity at 1605.
This is where American Airlines started.
And the pilot even spent some time and gave me a pretty cool history lesson about Lunkin Field just on the east side of Cincinnati.
The rectangle hangar with a round top on the north end is where Aeronca, that was the factory where they made Aeronca. And this is where Neil Armstrong took his first cross-country flight. He came down here. Okay. And this is where Charles Lindbergh landed when he got back.
Before you know it, we were back at the base. Very, very smooth ride, and he landed this big EC145 on a dime on this dolly, and it was an absolutely wonderful experience.
Air Care 3 back at base, safe. 20 after, we're going to shut down, drop off our passenger here, and refuel. We'll be up after that, headed back down.
And so the first thing that you notice that when you sit back here is just, if you are a paramedic and you're used to working on an ambulance, it feels like you're in the back of an ambulance. I'm 6'1" and my head does not hit the roof. Even with the helmet on, it doesn't hit the roof. I can stretch my legs out without kicking that thing down there. I can stretch my legs out. If you're sitting over in this seat to my right, you're at the head of the patient and you are able to intubate the patient. You're able to manage the airway and control everything from the head, just like you would in one of the captain's seats inside of a regular ambulance. It's perfect positioning. And then the other seat, which is in this case where the flight nurse is sitting today, is going to sit over here to the side of the patient, kind of like the bench seat in an ambulance, but you can move that seat forward and backwards. You can rotate it and get it to the position that you want for the patient, which is super important. And sitting over here in front of me is going to be the actual stretcher system, which is an exact same stretcher that would be in an ambulance. As you've seen from some of my other videos, many helicopters do not even have a stretcher system in them, and instead they have like a sled system or something like that that has to be taken out and put on a hospital bed or onto another stretcher, which is not necessarily the end of the world, but when you have an actual ambulance EMS stretcher back here, it makes your ability to move the patient around far easier. No, it's not a power lift or anything like that, because that would add hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pounds of weight to the aircraft, but it is a good stretcher. It's safe, it's solid, and it also limits the need to have medical crew, like hospital crew or physicians or nurses or firefighters or ground paramedics. coming over to the aircraft if they don't necessarily have to, because the crew of this aircraft can load the patient themselves, and it just reduces the overall safety risk. So most of the stuff is going to be directly in reach. I mean, just above my head up here is going to be the radio and comm system, where I'm going to be able to adjust my volume, switch my channels, call somebody on the regular radio, maybe on the sat radio, and control my voice sensitivity and the squelch and stuff like that. And I can do that for both of these seats sitting from right here. I can reach over to these compartments that are sitting over here to my left and get the gloves that I need. You're going to see carabiners all over this aircraft. Everything in an aircraft has to be secured because if there's an impact or something stops or something like that, this aircraft's going 150 miles an hour, 130 miles an hour, 140 miles an hour. Even something small like your phone or just some little item that might be sitting here that's unsecured can fly forward and hit you. So it's always important to always have your face shield down, always stay seat belted, and always have everything secured. And that's why you got these carabiners everywhere and all of these mounting systems. Over here next to the glove is just some extra storage where you might find some non-rebreather masks and some oxygen delivery devices, and even maybe some more gloves and IV stuff. And obviously sitting behind me here is going to be the Hamilton T1 vent. This is a cream of the crop vent, and this is what is used to help breathe for somebody. If they're intubated or something like that, obviously you have to have a machine breathe for them, and they're on a ventilator, but also for people who are awake and breathing on their own, who might be on BiPAP or CPAP or need some type of high flow pressures or something like that. That would come through this Hamilton vent. In this drawer down here is just going to be some extra stat pack cases down here. And so what I've noticed is, especially from the nurse that I told you that has been here for 40 years, is everything on this aircraft and all of the aircraft is set up in a way to where everybody knows where it is. It's all super organized. There's not anything extra that you wouldn't need. You're never going to find a bag full of 27 syringes. If it's supposed to have 2 syringes, it's going to have 2 syringes. Things are going to be in order, and they are color coded, and they are labeled. When you take one of these stat packs out, and this is just another setup that has 3% fluids in it and IV tubing, it's all in this one packet, and it's never mixed around anywhere. And all 3 of their aircraft are going to be set up exactly the same way. And so you got extra IV stuff and tubing and infusion stuff here in this drawer. This item here is going to be what your helmet hooks up to. And so the helmet for any flight paramedic or pilot or flight nurse or the flight physicians in this case will plug into this port right here, and it'll have where you can either key up to talk on the radio, or if this particular button is put in the right orientation, it's just an open mic, and you're talking to everybody on the aircraft through the intercom system, and then you would only push the button to actually communicate outside of the aircraft. And then it's got its own volume right here, and there's one of those for each seat. This green hose here is going to be the high pressure hose that would plug into either the back bulkhead there, where there is an oxygen Christmas tree back there, or it could plug into a mobile oxygen tank. They've got their policies and procedures down here, just in case somebody needs to be reminded what their policies and procedures are. They have their lighting system up here above that is night vision compliant. They also have their fresh air vents that where the aircraft is continuously vented through those cool NACA air ducts that are out on the front nose of the aircraft, which is super cool. And right down here in the bottom is where their blood would go. They're trialing a certain whole blood program right now, so they don't all carry whole blood at Air Care, but they do carry a couple units of packed red blood cells and a couple units of plasma on each aircraft, and that would be stowed directly underneath here behind this webbing, behind this net. Okay, so moving over here to where the nurse's seat is, sitting right here, going to be on the stretcher is going to be this stat pack, and this stat pack, I have never seen anything that was more organized in my life than the stat pack, where the intubation kit and the IV kit and the backup airway and the regular airway is all super organized in a fashion that one doesn't have to be searching around for certain medicines or where's my pediatric stuff or where's this stuff. It's all in pre-made kits that they've made here, and keeps everything super organized so that they can be worried about doing proper patient care than wondering where one of their laryngoscope blades is or something. Over here along the top is going to be where they can control their suction units. There's high pressure oxygen, there's medical air. I never understand why any of these things ever have a medical air component to it. I don't know if that's something that's required in some medical world, but I don't know whoever uses that medical air. But you have multiple controls for suction up here and oxygen, and then you've got outlets all over the place for 110 volt to plug in things like your monitor. You can plug in your vent, you can plug in your tubing, you can plug in your phone, you can plug in whatever you got to plug in. And this bar mount system that you see here is so amazing because it allows them to mount stuff to this mounting hardware. And then if they get a new piece of equipment or if they have to substitute a piece of equipment, they don't have to rearrange the whole aircraft. They can just kind of move something along on this system to another place that works for them. We've got some extra mounting points here for these Sapphire pumps. I saw back in their training room that they had a couple dead Mini-Mates. And then moving here to the back of the stretcher, they have their Zoll X series monitor that's able to do pulmonary artery waveforms, arterial waveforms, as well as all the standard stuff that any monitor defibrillator is going to do, like defibrillation and pacing and cardioversion, 4-lead monitoring and 12-lead acquisition, and all of that stuff Bluetooth to their chart, so they don't have to handwrite 17,000 vitals every report. They can just hit a couple buttons and it goes into the report system, so that's pretty helpful. Moving up here to the top of this bulkhead right here, hearing protection is really, really important. Underneath the stretcher right here, they will have this hearing protection that they're going to put on every single patient. I mean, there's only 2 jet engines 3 feet above their head, so it's a little loud. And so every patient would at least get this hearing protection. If they needed to communicate with their patient, they could utilize the headset that's here inside of this compartment, which will then allow them to talk through the intercom system to the patient, which may or may not be necessary, just depends on the situation. But there's also an extra seat back here where they can take a guest like me, which is super, super cool. Or if they're flying a 3-year-old, one of the worst things that can happen when you're flying a 3-year-old is obviously that kid is super, super sick, is leave one of the parents behind. And so if they are able to, if it's safe and appropriate, by all means, they can take one of the parents and the parent can fly in the helicopter with their kid so that they're not separated during transport, which is a huge comfort thing and empathetic thing that you're only able to do in an aircraft that has an extra seat, which is super awesome. Okay, and so then we're back here to the back of the aircraft, which again, I think is the coolest part of this helicopter, that there's so much room here to load these patients in and out of. You can obviously see that their stretcher is hooked in here in almost the same exact fashion as it would be in a regular ambulance. They've got some extra storage over here in this door, and they have an extra D tank that's sitting right here. But right here is pretty neat. This is an extra thing that most aircraft that I've seen don't have. This is a what they call their critical care bag, and within this bag they have 3 or 4 specialties, if you will, that are in there. There's and they're all in stat packs, and so they have a trauma pack, they have a high risk OB pack, they have something that might be focused more on ECMO, they have something that might be focused more on escharotomies and burn patients and stuff like that. And so instead of having to take, if they know that they are showing up on scene to somebody who's been involved and has 3rd-degree burns all over their body, they don't need to take this whole kit. They can just open it up and take out the burn stat pack, which is really, really efficient, really, really cool. And this switch right here actually activates a timed light just outside the rear doors. All right, guys, so the weather's coming in, so we might have to put this beautiful aircraft back in the hangar here in just a minute. But I do appreciate you guys coming along with me for the ride. UC Air Care and the mobile care part with the mobile stroke unit. Make sure you check out part 2 when that gets posted. But these 2 services, especially Air Care right here, absolutely impressive. The crew, so polite,
so professional, so unbelievably highly educated and trained and knowledgeable about all things critical care, whether it's the flight nurse or the physician or anything aviation related. When I was talking with the pilot, it's just there's nothing that is shorted here. Okay? Doesn't matter if it's patient care or the aircraft or the safety or the knowledge of the pilots or the base itself or the equipment that they have. Nothing is shorted. They have spared no expense. And again, to me, it seems that it's all within their theme of bringing the resources of UC healthcare hospitals out into the community to improve patient cares, to improve the quality of life, and to save people's lives. It's super awesome, and the men and women that work here, super cool, wonderful stuff that they do. Like I said, thanks again for coming along. If you got a helicopter or a cool ambulance or a cool fire truck or something like that you want me to come check out, leave a comment below. If you guys ever need anything like some cool swag or a stupid shirt or a stupid coffee mug or something like that, or even anything like EMS instructor classes or EMS refreshers, just visit the website at thedrmedic.com and we'll certainly hook it up, and that's the best way to support this channel. I do appreciate you guys supporting, like and subscribe, do all that stuff, and I will see you on the next episode.